Today we're going to be talking more about trails. Surprise, surprise. We've learned about both the Oregon and the Santa Fe Trail, but a little bit different focus. So before we've just been learning about the trails and the struggles and the decisions that pioneers had to face, how it affected Native Americans and the Mexican people that already lived there. Today we're going to talk about primary and secondary sources. So I'm very excited to teach you about this. It was kind of eye-opening for some students last year, and I hope that you too enjoy this lesson. After today's lesson, you're going to be able to state the difference between a primary and a secondary source. You're also going to be able to identify primary and secondary sources. So what is a primary source? A primary source is a piece of evidence created by someone at the time of event. And that's the big difference is whatever the source is, whatever you're looking at, whatever you're hearing is created by the person that it happened to. So an example of this would be somebody writing a letter, a diary entry, a government record of like a marriage or a criminal act, an autobiography, meaning they wrote about their own lives, an artifact, so perhaps a shoe or a mirror or a brush or a piece of computer software. So again, it's created by someone at the time of event. It's happening right now. I'm creating it at the exact same time. The secondary source is what we learn a lot from because we don't have a ton of primary sources that help us truly understand what's going on. So, secondary sources are information created by someone who was not present at the event after an event happened. So, all of these presentations you've been listening to about the trails, those are all secondary sources because believe it or not, I was not alive during the Oregon or the Santa Fe Trail in the 1800s. So, this is information that's created by somebody else after the event happened. So some examples of this are newspaper articles, textbooks, biographies, encyclopedias, and dictionaries, atlases, things created after the event happened. So if it's happening right now, I'm creating it, that's primary. Primary means one, first person, it's happening right now. Secondary means second, afterwards. So I'm doing it after it happens. All right. So we've been learning about the trails, and so far, mostly it's been secondary sources. We've heard videos from historians. Okay, they were not alive, they were not there. I've gotten some information from books that we have read, or I have read and then given it to you, and the books were not created during that time of the trails. So those would be secondary sources and also some articles that scholars have written. So, again, none of these people were alive when the trails were there. They have researched, they have learned, sometimes from primary sources, sometimes from other secondary sources, but then they presented their information, and that's how I've given it to you. All secondary sources. However, primary sources hold some valuable knowledge. Some examples of that would be photographs, diaries, and letters. Fourth graders, what you're looking at right now on this screen, I cannot read it. I highly doubt that you can read it. This isn't actually a primary source of somebody that was on a trail. So this is a piece of a journal entry that they have written that we have still today. Primary sources are great because they help us understand firsthand what the people were feeling, seeing, experiencing, and they help us to kind of live through that time in the world in their shoes. The thing about primary sources are they usually come with strong opinions because it's what that person's feeling at the time. It's not a step back to say, well, this is the truth. This is what was really happening. It's exactly what that person was feeling. Historians today take things like this diary and they transcribe it so it's easier for us to read. And we are going to actually read what this person wrote. So this was a person by the name of Harriet Bidwell, and she was considered the only white woman on the train. And they called them like wagon trains, and she wasn't actually on a train; she was a wagon train. And this was the Santa Fe Trail. So it's just a middle piece of her diary that was from that last image, and I'm going to read it aloud to you. Think about what Harriet was feeling. These are her exact words, and some of them may sound strange to you because our language has evolved over time. I'm going to start reading right here at the very top. Milton gathered some sticks and made our tea, while I prepared our bed in the carriage and, committing ourselves to the care of our Heavenly Father, felt safe and tired to sleep, but could not much on account of mosquitoes, which annoyed me constantly. And we also watched mules. Some, although they were picketed near by, we felt some fears lest the Indians might steal them. But I think had the mosquitoes behaved decently, we should have rested very well. 3 head of cattle strayed away and probably found a home among the Indians. They were not found. So, and then she goes on to say more things. She also said more before that, fourth graders. But as you can see, it was a woman that was traveling maybe with her husband because she was preparing their bed. And she was saying that they felt safe, but the mosquitoes were really a bother. It's interesting because none of the sources that I have read, all the secondary sources, mention things like mosquitoes because they weren't big, huge, important things. But to Harriet at that time, it kept her from sleeping, which was a huge, important thing. So it helps me to understand how a woman on the Santa Fe Trail truly felt. It also talks about the fear of some of the Native Americans, which she called Indians, but now we don't use that language. It talked about sometimes the fear of them coming to take the livestock. So, just a much different, interesting perspective. So, again, primary sources are things, it's evidence by someone that um, created it at the time of the event happening. She wrote that journal piece when it was happening. Secondary sources are things when they are created after the event happened. So I heard about it, I saw it, and then I created something to tell other people about it. Today, your work is going to look like this, and the directions on are actually on your work, but you're going to be separating these from primary to secondary. So remember, if it's happening right then and I capture it, that's going to be primary. If I see it, I hear about it, and then I talk about it, that's going to be secondary. Good luck, fourth graders, and later we will be creating our own primary and secondary sources. Thank you.